In this video we're going to look at some of the configuration settings for a router. In this particular case I'm going to be using a D-Link router. It's much the same for many others. First of all, when you set up your router you will need to log in. You're going to connect from your computer preferably via a Ethernet cable, and it should tell you what the IP address that you'll need to use to be able to log in. So in my case, my router has asked me to use 192.168.0.1 and I've gone to that page. It's now asking me to log in. You may have either no password or the word password, or it may give you a specific password that you need to use the first time. Type in that password and then you're ready to log in. Now, one thing that you will need to do, and we'll go over this, is you will need to change that admin password. It's very important that you have a separate password that's known only to yourself for working with this system. Okay, now we're going to set up the different parts to what we've got. Now, we're not going to be using the internet at all, in the sense that we're not connecting to the outside service. So we're going to bypass this one. We can go straight into the wireless settings. I recommend you also bypass the wizards. You can use those if you like, but I'm going to go straight into the manual connection so we can see what we've got here. Now, I've got mine set up already. This is a dual band. You may have a single band, but I've got a dual band router, and that means that I'm able to connect wirelessly on the 2.4 gigahertz band and the 5 gigahertz band. Whether you have one, two, or whether you have a third band that you have available to you is entirely up to the router that you buy. The more bands that you have available, perhaps the easier and more compatible your system will be. Basically, we're going to set them up in an identical way, but we will change the name. I think it's best to have the SSID, the wireless network name, reflect which band the person is connecting to. So it helps you in terms of your troubleshooting. So in this case, my 2.4 gigahertz band, I've typed in a name of offdanet, put a dash in and 2 to indicate that we're on the 2.4 gigahertz band, whereas down here I've got a 5 gigahertz band and I've put in a dash 5. That means that when a mobile device is going to connect to our system, they will see the SSID, and if they're capable of seeing the 5 gigahertz band, then they may see both. We'll encourage them to choose 5 when they can. The 5 gigahertz band is a little less crowded, has better separation for the different wireless frequencies that are being used. So that's certainly the best one for them to use. If they can't see the 5, then they'll probably just only see the 2, and that's fine. So we'll try and split the people who are trying to log in between the two bands if we can, and where we've got everybody who could see 5, then that's fine. Keep them up on 5. It's a better band for handling most of the communication. Now, the mode that we want to have all the possible modes. So we want the N, the G and the B. So leave it as a mixed mode for both of them so that we've got the maximum compatibility. The enable auto channel scan is fine. You can leave that one on. That would let it go through and determine which channel to actually use. In this case, it's going to perhaps default to 1, but it will try and pick a channel that is perhaps not being used so much in the particular environment that you're in, and if it's got a good separation there, then it can use that. If you want to manually set the channel, then channel 1, channel 6 or channel 11 are quite good choices as being the furthest away from some of the others. So 1, 6 or 11 is fine, but if your router has the ability to do an auto channel scan, let it do that for you. Keep the channel width as normal, keep the visibility as visible. We do want to be able to see the offdanet SSID. Whoops, we'll just have to log back in here. Sorry about that. Just logging back in there. Okay, so what we want to do is to make sure that we've got the maximum compatibility that we can have. Okay, so keep it visible so that everybody can see the SSID so that they'll be able to select it. Now, as far as the security mode is concerned, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to make it easy for people to connect and we're going to run with no security. If you want to, or you're worried about your environment and you want to have security, then I would suggest you choose the WPA Personal, or sometimes it will be listed as WPA2, and then you can have a personal key, a pre-shared key. It's got a suggested one here that you could use, or you could create your own. You can type in your own. As I say, I'm interested in this having the easiest connectability, so I'm running it with no security. When I'm not using the system for work with particular groups, I switch the router off so nobody can actually connect to it at all. But for ease of compatibility, I'm running it as no security. If you feel that in a classroom you've got another classroom nearby that people might be able to log in, then perhaps you could put a password here and use security. That will add an extra step to the login procedures for the clients on their smartphones or tablets. When they go to log in, they'll need to be told what that password is to be able to connect, and if you change the password, then they'll have that extra step when they're going to change things. Network settings. Let's click on the network settings here, and you can see the router IP address is this one here that I told you about. That's the one that we've had to, in our browser, go to try and connect. We have a default subnet mask. We're going to leave that. It's given it a default host name. We can leave that. You could change it if you wish. I'm going to leave it as normal. You have an optional domain name which you can put in, and we tick the Enable DNS Relay. The main part that we're interested though is the DHCP server settings. This is where we get to provide an IP address to the client computers, tablets, smartphones. So we do want to enable that, and we need to set a range. So my router is on number 1, and that's the address that I'm going to use to be able to connect to the router. I want my students to come in and I want to determine the range, and I've selected here from 50 to 199. We can actually go up to about 240 there, but that gives me plenty of addresses that I'm going to work with. And I've also set a lease time. The lease time is 120 minutes, that's 2 hours. If my session ran longer than that, it will be refreshed, but this means that at the end of 2 hours that lease would, if the computer is no longer there, it will go back and ask for a brand new lease, which is a good way of making it easier for your computer to be able to be given the same initial IP address. Now what we actually want is for our computer to have an IP address here. This IP address is the IP address for my computer. I can see my IP address. I've got 2 IP addresses here. I've got 192.168.0.50 that is being given to this particular computer. So if I go to that address, it'll take me to the web page that I've got. Now, I want that same IP address every time my computer logs into this router, and I've actually been able to do that through a DHCP reservation list. So sitting down here, I've been able to enable and pick up the connection. I've got the address there, and it's recognized the MAC address. So every time I plug my computer into this router, it goes and looks at that looks at that MAC address and says, oh, I know you, I'm going to give you that particular IP address. And that means also that when client machines go to try and find my web service, they're always looking at the correct location of my computer, which is set as 50. If you do not have the DHCP reservation list in the router system that you've got, that's where having the lease time set as something small is quite useful. Let me log in again because it's complaining about me spending so much time talking. Just timed me out of working there. So if we've got the IP address reserved, that's great. If we can't reserve it, then having the lease time as short is useful. The next time we switch on our router, if my computer is the first one there, it should be assigned the first available IP address, which would be 50. So I can almost guarantee that as long as my computer is the one that's plugged in via the Ethernet cable, I will get the address 50. But if we can use the DHCP reservation list, that's a better way of going. So that gives us that. And that's really pretty much the only setting that we need in terms of the network and in terms of the wireless. Okay? The only other things that we need to be thinking about is we want to set our admin password. Very important that you have your own admin password, otherwise savvy students who log into your system would be able to come and hijack the router. So make sure you do come in and change the password, verify the password to something that only you are going to use, and then you keep your router as your own. So good luck with getting your setup working. If you want to use a different range for your IP addresses that you're working with, that's entirely possible as well. Some of the alternate ranges could be using 1 here instead of the 0 or 2. You might see some of those. So I've got my home network here, which you can see, which is using the 2 range. So 192.168.2.52 is the IP address that this computer has been given from my home router, whereas this one here is the one that's been given by the D-Link router that I'm looking at here, which I use and take into classes to run the offdanet system.